Have you ever taken some time to sit and think about what it feels like to walk through the raindrops? If you've seen this movie, you know that reference. You probably would have to have seen it more than once so that some of the dialogue can stick with you a little bit. Something tells me that unless it's a guilty pleasure of yours, you might not have seen this movie. And you might not have even finished it the first time you tried to watch it. This is the kind of movie we're dealing with. So with that, let us unpack Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. Let's do it. So I'm going to tell you off the top, this is not a great movie. And in fact, I can't even in good conscience recommend this movie for you to watch as something good. You might be wondering, given that, why am I talking about this movie? Well, the easy answer is it's a bit of a curveball, a departure in the energy around stuff, because I want to give other movies some kind of shine too. And sometimes those movies may not be critically great, but they have something about them that speaks to me and that just makes me want to just talk about it and have a little bit of fun with it. And I think that's the reason I'm talking about this particular movie. So while it may not be critically great, it does have some fun going on about it. And there's also probably a little bit of unintentional fun too. So here we are. Now, if you're a Street Fighter fan, you might be curious about this movie, but you might be curious if you're a Smallville fan. And something tells me that your enthusiasm about the property of Street Fighter probably wasn't enough to get you to see this movie. Because, as evidence of the box office, if you know anything about this movie, it didn't do well at the box office. And so that should tell you something about it. And I think too, I knew when I was going to see it the first time. I did go see this in theaters. I took my sister and I, we walked from home to the mall to watch this movie. And I don't think we thought it was going to be good. I can't tell you what her reasoning was for going. She probably just wanted to go do something fun with her brother. But personally, now I'm a fan of Street Fighter, but I was also a fan of Smallville, a huge fan of Smallville. And I had a crush on Kristen Krug, like a lot of people did, and still do. And so, if I'm being honest, that was my reasoning for going to see this movie. I wasn't thinking about whether it'd be good or not. In fact, I didn't really care. I just wanted to see Kristen Krug. Learning that she was going to be playing Chun-Li, that's another situation. She's playing a character who is as legendary as any other. It's a big deal. Chun-Li, and having a movie centered around her already is something to pique your interest if you're a Street Fighter fan. And so personally, I know I was curious to see what it was about when I went to go see it. Now, it's been a lot of years since my first viewing, and I recently, I've watched it several times over the years. I recently rewatched it, and it just dawned on me that, you know what, I had a lot of fun watching the movie, and I always get a chance to laugh watching the movie. It's fun to watch it with my sister when we get to do that, because we get to laugh at some of the lines and some of the stuff. So it has some appeal for me. It has some juice. Now, again, this movie's not going to be winning any awards. It didn't win any awards. In fact, it probably won some Razzies. Probably, now I'm thinking about it, it probably won some bad movie awards. But I think if you look at this movie like, bad movies that you enjoy, because again, I've said this before, even bad movies, there's something about them that are kind of cool, that you're kind of glad that the movie exists. Even if you're annoyed by a lot of it, there might be one or two things in there that the movie does that you appreciate. And I think looking at the movie like that, like Tommy Wiseau's The Room, if you're familiar with the legend of that movie and how some people will go to watch it if it's being shown in theaters, wherever it is, for fun, just to make fun of it, Like it's the ritual of watching a movie that is universally thought of as not a good movie, and you go to experience it. There's a fun in it. You're not watching it for what the movie's doing for you. It's just the fact that the movie exists is enough. You get to go and just make fun of it. And I think looking at this movie similarly can help. For instance, I started out this video talking about walking through the raindrops. So sorry. It's one of my favorite lines to quote from this movie because it feels like it's supposed to sound cool. This is something that I find is funny in some movies when writers write something that sonically sounds like something. It has some juice to it. But when you think about what's actually being said, it actually doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't feel like it ties into the point that the character's trying to make. For instance, Chris Klein he's an Interpol agent. He's trying to track down M. Bison, played by Neil McDonough. It was great in this movie, by the way. And he says something about he was chasing bison across, 3 continents, whatever, 2 continents for X number of years, around 11 cities, and he never got close, not once. This guy walks through the raindrops. And he said it with such conviction and such seriousness. It feels like it should have some more punch than it does. Because when you think about it, walking through the raindrops is just like, we all know what it is to walk through raindrops. You just walk through them. It's not meant to be taken literally. I know, this is just me like laughing at the sound of the line. I feel like a better way that could have been written is like if you said something like, oh, this guy's like trying to catch smoke. Because the implication is that obviously we didn't need that because the dude told us he's chased bison through all these different cities, all these continents for all this amount of time, and he could never catch him. But if you didn't get close, you got close enough to find out where he was to track him for 11 years or however long you chased him. So when you start thinking more about it, it starts to fall apart. Like certain aspects of the movie starts to fall apart. And I just think that something like that could have been better written to sound, stronger. But having said that, it oddly matches the tone of the movie. Like the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. And yet there's an element of it that there are parts that feel like they should be taken a little bit seriously because this is an origin story for Chun-Li, and she is on a mission to avenge different injustices or avenge her father. If you know the Street Fighter backstory, Chun-Li becomes engaged in the tournament because her father is killed by M. Bison. And she, at least in the games anyway, Chun-Li's a cop, and she goes into the tournament to avenge her dad's death. Here, she's not a cop. She was a concert pianist, played wonderful piano. I feel like Kristen Krug actually played piano for real in this movie. Dad was kidnapped, and she hadn't seen him for years and stuff. So, meanwhile, he's been working for Bison against his will. Ultimately, Chun-Li's trying to figure out what's happening with her dad. She doesn't know he's alive, but she knows Bison is the enemy. So everything she's doing is to get to Bison. And so there are elements of that feel like they should be taken a little bit seriously. But because tonally the movie is not consistent, those are some things that can take you out of the experience. So Chris Klein and Moon Bloodgood, they are cops essentially working the Bison case from another angle. And Chun-Li's like this lone, she's this wild card, also after Bison. And the energy with the police stuff is kind of light too, even when they come across fairly serious things like dead bodies and things. Like there's an energy about it that's kind of like, it's cartoonish in a way. I want to go back to the writing for a second and mention Justin Marks. He wrote the screenplay for this movie. And as I mentioned, I think it's a funny screenplay. It has some moments on the page that are cool, but it's ultimately a screenplay that has more in it that is unintentionally funny to me than I think was the intent. I bring up Justin Marks because he actually has some pretty sound credits to his name. He obviously, after writing this, he wrote the live action adaptation of the 2016 version of Jungle Book, which I loved. I thought that was a great movie. And he also is credited as co-writer for Top Gun Maverick. He's also a writer, co-creator, showrunner, along with his wife, Rachel Kondo, for the amazing series Shogun. So it's like when I look at those properties and then I look at Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li, I'm a little bit like, wow, he wrote all those things and wrote this movie too. But it's just one of those things where it's like, and I can't knock him too much. I know what time it is. As a writer myself, I know what time it is. I know the deal. And also as a writer, that's where my feelings come in about the writing of this script. It's like, man, you could have written that so much better. Or you could have written it differently. But the other thing about that, too, is that the identity of this film, the humor of this film, whether intentional or not, is part of the charm. So, I can't be too upset about that. Even though I think it's all that great, but it does have some fun. And come on, you can't lose. You got Kristen Crook. It's a win all day. Like, you're not losing anything when you watch. She plays the role with such conviction. Even if she may be miscast a little bit. Like, again, whatever. I personally wouldn't say that, but but I also think that as an adaptation, it's fine. It's not meant to be like the exact situation. You know how hard it is to find somebody who looks like Chun-Li? Like, skip all that. Okay, I think you can find someone who looks like Street Fighter 2 Chun-Li. She feels like she's more that iteration you can find, but present day Chun-Li would be really hard to find for a movie like this. So hey, this is what you got. This is what we have. And but no, look, from an acting standpoint, I think the acting is sound. Neil McDonough is a good Bison. There are not many versions of Bison in live action specifically that can top Raul Julia's performance in the 1994 Street Fighter. And if we're being honest, I think Raul Julia's performance is probably the strongest thing about that movie. Having said that, Neil McDonough makes this version of Bison his own, and it works. Neil McDonough is no stranger to playing shady characters, villains, and he's good in this. You have Michael Clark Duncan is an amazing actor. He plays Balrog in this movie, and he feels like he's having fun. He's having genuine fun in the role, and that actually is fun to watch. So for whatever the complaints about the movie, the issues about the movie, there is fun being had, and it's like, oh, it's a joy to see him seeming like he's enjoying himself, and that's cool. Robin Shou, who you know from the original Mortal Kombat movie, Liu Kang, he is again in this movie. He's also a good actor, but you can tell how the way he's acting in this movie is not how he's acting in Mortal Kombat. There's something about yes, they're different characters, but the level I'm talking about, there's a calibration to the performance that he couldn't play again like he was playing Liu Kang. Not only because they were different characters, but something about the tone of this movie felt like it was more conducive for how he played Gen. Something about the acting feels almost like a soap opera in a way. And not that it's bad acting, it's that the tone and timbre of soap opera acting, even good soap opera acting, is different from what you might see in a film. And I think that there's something about that feels like that here. But he's compelling enough, and he's someone you want to watch, and he looks like he's enjoying himself too. So it's kind of hard to, you can't knock it too much. Again, you got Chris Klein, Moon Bloodgood. Their acting also is consistent with the tone of this movie. In fact, I think when you really break it all the way down, Kristen Crook, Neil McDonough are probably the two actors who are playing their roles as straight as you could play it for for this movie, for the feel of this movie. And I think it works for the most part. The script doesn't do them too many favors, but I think they actually really do a lot to make it work. I think Neil McDonough has a lot more juice to work with. So he feels whenever he's on screen, the movie you don't think about the writing too much with him. And because he's the villain, he's got, pretty clear motivations around what he's doing. And Chun-Li also has pretty clear motivations. I think when you have two characters that have clear goals, that can help a lot in the writing. It's just at a certain point you can start nitpicking little things about like dialogue and stuff. And why did you say that here? That doesn't make sense. All of that. But I think if you strip all that away and look at the actions they take and how they move, everything tracks pretty well. And I think that I like that. Yeah, man, if you're curious, first of all, if you've stuck around to the end of this video, again, thank you for your time and for listening to me talk about this movie that is probably not going to be your favorite movie if you decide to watch it. But you might have a little bit of fun. So I appreciate you listening to this breakdown. That's going to do it for this review. I'm getting out of here. Take it easy. Take care of yourself. And I will see you in the next review.